Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. We've got a guest on tonight. Great guest. I've just been so watching him from afar down here. But first of all, I want to go through our drugs policy, the party drugs policy. The decriminalisation of illegal drugs does not mean the selling of these drugs in shops. NHP UK believed that the lucrative drug trade should be taken away from the criminal gangs and put back into the hands of government-controlled doctors. This system would be prescription only to obtain drugs like cannabis, heroin, ecstasy, cocaine and amphetamine. The war against the illegal drug trade in the UK has failed miserably. In the early 1960s, when heroin and cocaine were controlled drugs and available from a doctor on prescription legally, there were an estimated 2,500 addicts. In 1964, heroin and cocaine were made illegal. We now have an estimated 300,000 known heroin and cocaine addicts, with the number of unknown addicts probably much higher. If someone wanted to buy illegal drugs today, it would not be difficult to find a regular drug dealer. So what is the point of them being illegal? This situation only helps the organised crime gangs who want more and more new addicts to earn more money from them. This is not a healthy situation for our community. The illegal drugs trade is one of the main driving forces fueling the knife gun crime epidemic around the UK. Millions of people won't use the police to resolve drug-related disputes, which results in parallel societies. This can be resolved by decriminalisation. National security risk. The vast amount of illegal drugs gangs across the UK probably have more firearms than all the UK police forces combined. Many of these drug gangs have direct links with countries who don't have our best interests at heart. This is a very dangerous situation which is easily preventable. Billions and billions of pounds have been wasted on police law enforcement, the prison service, customs and excise, the court services in the war against drugs. This has made no difference whatsoever why the legal drugs are free. The war on drugs has failed and our prisons are overcrowded with drug-related criminals serving short and long-term sentences. In the USA, they tried extremely harsh prison sentences, which also failed, and even more money needed to keep more people in prison for longer. This also made no difference to the supply of illegal drugs on American streets. Benefits of decriminalisation. All the money saved from police, prison, customs, court services could be channeled into rehabilitation treatment centres and courses for people who wanted to stop their drug addiction. Crime figures would come down dramatically. The drugs available would be much safer to use since they contain no toxins, which is not always the case with drug dealers. This would also significantly reduce the number of fatal overdoses. Vast amounts of firearms, which are a national security risk, would no longer be required by drug gangs. We must also recognise that some people want to take drugs, which means it's pointless and a waste of money to force them into rehabilitation centre. NHP UK campaigned to implement a 10-year trial period of decriminalising of drugs, and if the results are not successful, it can be changed back to what we have now. NHP UK strongly advise people not to take any of the drugs mentioned, whether they are decriminalised or not. It's not good for your health, and your body definitely doesn't need them. Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. Pat's going to be late, but so I've been an activist for so long, and God bless our Arlene from Inverness. I've spent a lot of time in Glasgow and up Inverness, and that's where I've first seen our guest tonight, Niall. Good evening, Niall.
Good evening, John. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Pat's in the run.
There he is.
All right, Pat just got in.
Sorry, I'm late. What's the sound check like?
Good.
Okay, good. Carry on.
So, Niall, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, what you've done.
Well, my name's Niall Fraser. I'm based up here in Scotland. I've been a sort of political activist ever since the COVID days. I think that's when I was sort of politically switched or activated in that way, because I just seen everything around me, all my freedoms being totally dissolved, totally taken away, and I couldn't believe people were capitulating to it. So that's when I decided in myself that, you know, it's now or never, really. If you're going to be a political activist or you're going to do something, you may as well do it. Because I really did think at the time that was the end of freedom. And I think if people didn't really push back against the COVID days, we could still be in lockdown to this day. But I've been a political activist since then. I've done a lot of things. I was working alongside the Family Party against the what I call the Rainbow Mafia, this LGBT cultist group that operates not just here in Scotland but across the Western world, really. You know, they're espousing that men can change into women and women can change into men. So we tackled that. We went to the Sandyford Gender Clinic. That's what they say. It's a gender service over there. And we threatened to brick it up. I really did want to brick it up and then go to jail for it. But I was talked down by the Family Party and says, no, we'll do a symbolic bricking up of the Sandyford with the cardboard boxes. And to be fair, it had quite a massive effect. That was the first time I come face to face with the Rainbow Mob, as it were. There was a huge group of them. And it was only maybe 10 of us maximum against 300-400. Then I took Humza Yousaf to task at one of his fringe events. So Humza Yousaf, you know, he's notorious up here, and nobody has really called him out in the way that I did, where, you know, it's attack on white people, really. It's white this, white that. There's too many white doctors. There's too many white judges. There's too many white this, that, and other. There's too many white politicians. And he was, I mean, in a statement, it's not so bad, but the way he was saying it, he was spitting the words white. And for that to be aired in our parliament here in Scotland, it was too much for me. So I took him to task at a fringe event, stood up and heckled him. I said there was a pestilence on the land. I said he should be behind the bars. That went viral. That was, you know, multiple million hits on that. Recently, I've been doing a dark hole recently, John. In terms of investigating Scotland's new safe consumption room. And that does lead you down a really, truly dark path, John, when you understand, especially here in Scotland, where we've got such a prevalence of injecting drug users here in Scotland, that it really does... it really does take a toll on you, really, when you come to see the devastation, not only in the addicts themselves when you're talking to them, but the communities in which they're injecting and using drugs. It's a huge detriment to them. People are, you know, children can't play in these areas anymore. People can't walk their dogs in these areas anymore. And it has like a sort of a really devastating effect on community, because no one wants to clean them up anymore. It just gets left. People start, you know, either fleeing the areas or just not really giving a shit about them. It becomes, you know, just an ongoing problem. And I see it's almost, I can see it similar to like the bin strikes in Birmingham almost. I think it's a similar thing where people have just, you know, abandoned pride in their community almost. And that's something that we really need to bring back, is pride in their community, pride in where they live. And you can't do that when there's 200 or 300 needles in one wee enclosed corner. Or in the case of Birmingham, it's just a huge big mountain of bin bags. So that's what I've been doing up here in Scotland. I've ran for Parliament a few times. I ran in the by-election in Rutherglen, up against Michael Shanks, the Labour candidate, who walked it. And again, during that campaign, I said it was a one-issue campaign, really, for me. It was standing on the streets of Oregon saying a man can't become a woman, simple. And for that sentiment, I ended up getting a huge counter-protest against me, even running in the election. But again, it's just... it's all the rough and tumble of political activism up here in Scotland. It's a mad world up here, but I'm sure you've got just an equally as mad world down there.
I have, Niall. You know, when you talk about heroin, I'm from Oldham, me in Great Manchester. Mm-hmm. It's the heroin capital of the UK, mm-hmm. And you know, I'm going to be absolutely blunt now. Heroin isn't grown in any white guy's attic or anything like that. It comes from Afghanistan, and places like that, which is next door to Pakistan. And I've said online that since immigration came from Pakistan, our heroin's gone out of control. Yep. I've seen people grow up, start using it, go down the wrong road, the crime, the needles and all that. I've seen all this in Oldham, you know, and it's endemic to Oldham, but nobody will ever admit that. Mm-hmm. And I'm the R word for even saying it, but it's the truth. Yeah, you know, it's the truth, mm-hmm. and it's a big issue. Also, I know you did some. Did you run for like Scottish Member of Parliament?
I neglected to say that, but I ran for the Scottish. I mean, right when we began political activism, I got in tow with George Galloway, and it was a sort of pro-union party here in Scotland where. It's similar to the way the SNP operate, where we've got a different system up here. We've got proportional representation, like a quasi-proportional representation when you've got a constituency vote, and then you've got a second preference on a list vote, a regional type basis, where if you can achieve maybe 5 to 7%, you're going to get a member of parliament in. So the idea was that you were to vote for the person most likely to beat the SNP in the constituency, and then you would use your second vote for another pro-UK party, which was us, Alliance for Unity at the time. And, you know, the idea still remains solid, but at the time it wasn't picked up. I think it was maybe just a couple years too early. Maybe George Galloway wasn't the best figure to head it up here in Scotland. I mean, there's a number of factors there, but and I do intend on running in the election next year. I don't know under what banner yet, John. At the moment, you know, this is the thing. It's like
could be a good catch from Nationalising Party here. I'll tell them. Well, anyway, let's get on with what did you think about our drugs policy?
So I read it when I spoke to Pat earlier in the week. You know, when you said it's for full decriminalisation, you know, I was a bit. I don't really agree with that, but having looked at the policy in more in depth, I mean, the reasoning behind it all is pretty solid, John. And it's one of these things. There's a few ways to tackle the drug problem, right? And nobody really wants to go after it in Scotland. And I think it's due to fear, because just say, for instance, I'm Anis Sarwar, and I want to go after all the heroin dealers in Glasgow, right? What's going to happen the next day? Well, Anis Sarwar will probably get pictures of its children sent to him, where they go to school. So it's a very, very dangerous thing. And you're not, you know, I've recently become a dad. So it's one of these things where it's like, of course, you think about these things. You're not only putting yourself on the line, but you're putting your family on the line as well. It's a very, very difficult decision to make. But this is, I think, if you were to go after the dealers in Glasgow, cut the supply, then you could potentially solve the drug problem. But going back to your policies, you're right that it does take the power away for the gangs, right? But the government's just a bigger gang, John. You know, it's, I think my distrust of doctors has increased massively during the COVID time. So I wouldn't want the doctors dispensing these drugs either. So really, it's a sort of back and forth. You know, I'd more likely trust somebody on the street dealing heroin than I would a doctor. And it's a sad thing to say, but at the same time, there's maybe an element of truth in it as well. I don't really know what the solution is, but I'm glad that putting these ideas out there. I did see that it was a 10-year trial period, and I think that we should trial anything and everything in order to get the scourge of drugs sort of eradicated. And more to the point, the gang violence, the drug violence, and everything that comes along with it. And I think your policies go a long way to dealing with the gang aspects of it. But when it comes to drug usage, I'm not really sure what sort of impact that will have, positive or negative, if I'm honest. I think the problem we have here in Scotland is we need to have national campaigns and advertising and education sort of early in the school curriculum to the perils of drugs. We used to have that right across the UK. I think if you can maybe go back to your school years, maybe those people that come into your school maybe once every couple of years or whatever, and they've done school assemblies, and they were talking about how they lost their life to drugs, they lost their career to drugs, they lost everything. Maybe it's gambling, or some similar type of addiction things. But you don't really have that here in Scotland, especially pushed by the government. And it's all left to the third sector in order to put these things in. So I think that there's a number of things that need to be done. I think, one, you could go after the dealers directly, but that does come with some perils and dangers. You could do a sort of education right around Scotland, a national advertising campaign. I mean, just judging by the money that was spent on the Safe Consumption Room, all that money could have been used more wisely in terms of educating the public to the perils of drugs, rather than, and going after the dealers to a certain extent. You could have given the money to the police force in order to sort of set up a task force in order to go after them. But the Safe Consumption Room, I think it sets a bad precedent. Just even in the name, it's sort of an Orwellian name, the Safe Consumption Room, where you're assuming that there is a safe way to take heroin, which is just incorrect to me. And my investigating on this consumption room sort of revealed that addicts are not really using it in the numbers that they would like, the government would like. And in the local area, just adjacent to it, there's a Morrison's, a big Morrison's, so a big employer in the area, and on their premises, on their land, people, addicts, are walking into the bushes every single day like clockwork to smoke crack cocaine and still to inject heroin.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll just cut that and let's get your video on. It's about 6 minutes. We'll all be muted while it's on, yeah, and I'll do some sharing. So we'll get that on. Here it comes.
On Saturday, I spent the day speaking with addicts and investigating Scotland's new Safe Consumption Room on Hunter Street. And stay tuned, because you will not want to miss what I've found and dug up. All the journalists, all the news organisations are missing the real story here with this centre. The Scottish media class, they descended on this clinic as it opened. They did their videos, they took some photos. They would have been in and out within 15 or 20 minutes, while I spent hours there. The coverage of this story has revolved around the argument about whether we should be providing addicts with drugs and a place to inject those drugs that are illegal in any other postcode, when I'm telling you that the real story here isn't the moral quandaries that are surrounding the centre as a concept, but the impact of the centre on the surrounding area, particularly the Morrison's directly opposite the consumption rooms, as well as many other areas in the local vicinity. This is a map of the area, and here we have the consumption room outlined in blue and the Morrison's outlined in red, and as you can see, they're so close in proximity that you could move between the two in 30 seconds. And 30 seconds was all it took for me to find the first cluster of discarded needles. And I'll tell you something that happened that made me feel absolutely rotten. Sad. When I was photographing this first cluster of needles, found right here on the map, I turned round and a family was walking past, having just done their shopping. The family looked at me and said, as if to say, "What's he taking pictures of?" And they all looked down to where I was pointing the camera, and their eyes were drawn to the needles. So I said to the dad, "Please keep your kids back." And he nodded, said, "Yes, we know." I felt so rotten for inadvertently drawing attention to the discarded needles that their kids might have seen. And their eyes are too innocent to gaze upon such things. Children should not be subjected to this. This level of depravity has no right entering their subconsciousness in the first place, and I would never bring my children to shop at this particular Morrison's unless I had no other options, because I'm telling you all right now that where children could wander and explore, where pets could run about, there are definitely hundreds, but I reckon there are as many as close to 1,000 dirty disposed needles, and I'll put a montage on the screen for you to see just how bad it is. And that's not even the worst of it, ladies and gentlemen. We as the public are led to believe that addicts are entering the consumption room with their own purchased drugs, which is the case for some of them. But what they aren't saying is that the majority are going in to get their free hit of medical grade heroin from the clinic. This is what the addicts outside were telling me. I was informed they go in and they're handed a kit made up for the night before with a fresh needle, medical grade heroin, diamorphine. If they can't put the needle in their arm themselves, then a staff member will assist. In essence, our own Scottish government are putting medical grade heroin into the veins of Scots themselves. Imagine you're an addict and you go into the clinic seeking help, and on one hand they've got the 12-step recovery programme, and on the other hand they've got a needle primed with medical grade heroin. What choice is that? What sort of chance have these people got? It's absolutely deplorable. When these addicts then exit the doors of the consumption room back into the public, having just had a hit of heroin, then inevitably more problems begin to arise. Right across the road, they go into Morrison's, into the corners of the car park, into the bushes, where they're taking heroin, and oftentimes in full view of the public. While I was there, people were actively taking Class A drugs. These addicts were more than happy to allow me to photograph them smoking crack cocaine, so long as I didn't get their faces. All of this happening in the middle of the afternoon. Looking at the timestamp on the photo, it was taken at precisely 2:55 p.m. on Saturday afternoon in broad daylight. You know, there are distinct and separate issues in play when it comes to this consumption room. You know, starting with the obvious, I think it's downright wrong to enable drug addicts in this manner by putting up a consumption room in the very first place. It sets a very dangerous precedent and floats the notion in Scotland here that there is somehow a safe way to take heroin and other Class A drugs. Secondly, now that this consumption room is in place and operational, this must be having, firstly, a financial impact on Morrison's, who must pay fortunes and rates, and secondly, a psychological impact on the staff in Morrison's, having to be on high alert, having the need for 2 security guards on the doors. And lastly, the Morrison's car park is now a public health risk. As I mentioned earlier, hundreds if not thousands of discarded needles. It only takes one child to stray off the path, to fall onto a needle, hurting himself or herself, and potentially contracting HIV, which one of the addicts confirmed to me on Saturday that he was positive. And he takes a tablet a day to make it intransmissible. You know, I'll finish with this. These so-called safe consumption rooms, you're costing the taxpayer £7 million over 3 years, so they can afford to spend this amount of money on giving drugs to addicts, on providing fresh needles, on complimentary teas and coffees, but they can't find 40 grand a year to send somebody across the road to clean up all these discarded needles. What a shocking indictment that is, truly. Truly. You know, thanks for watching this, but please share this story and get it out there. Let's shame the Scottish Government into cleaning these streets. The people of Carlton deserve better, that's for sure.
Very good that. Is there any kind of like, did you get any details off the users when they go? Did you get any kind of interaction with them?
So, I mean, the first time I went, we spoke to addicts at length. We took some of the lunch at the Morrison's. And, you know, of course, they're asking for money and that, but, you know, you buy them cigarettes or, you know, tobacco and papers instead of giving them money. You know, the person I was with, he was been sober for 40 years now. He used to be a terror in Glasgow's East End for drugs and alcohol. But he's been sober 40 years and he knows, I mean, one time he gave £50 to an addict and it was the last £50 they ever spent. So he's learned, you know, the cold, hard lessons of life that way. But right, you know, this centre, it's right adjacent to it, there's something called the like a drug replacement program, right, where people are going and it's for like really hardcore addicts that are taking heroin. They're injecting heroin 3-4 times a day, and they're going and they're getting their first hit of heroin there, and then they're coming out, and of course they're coming out searching for more drugs, but we do get sort of anecdotal reports of them being sort of guided into the recovery programs just by being in there. But, you know, it's not enough for me. Generally, people are going in and, you know, they're consuming their drugs. They're in and away. They don't want to be sort of monitored in a way as well. I don't know if you know the sort of addict brain, but you're going into a brightly lit facility. You're watched by everyone. You're going into sort of like a Hollywood makeup booth with huge big mirrors and lights. You know, and you don't want to look at yourself when you're doing this sort of thing. So, I mean, I think it's destined for failure. But then we're sort of seeing this creeping stuff in the Scottish press now that they're going to expand it. They're going to expand it right across Scotland. And if this one costs 7 million over 3 years, then we look at maybe 20 facilities across Scotland. It's going to cost upwards of £500 million. So, and this is, I don't think it's got any feasible benefits. You know, all the reports that have been coming out says, oh, they've had 17 life-saving interventions. But for me, that's like saying, it's like me giving somebody a razor to slash their wrists and then being on hand to give them the bandage afterward. It doesn't make any sense to me. But they claim to have 17 life-saving interventions, but we know that at most, there's maybe 40 to 50 addicts using that centre, local addicts. So what they've saved, like what, 30-40% of these people? The numbers don't stack up. The costing doesn't stack up. And the fact that there's still a huge number of drug users just refusing to use the place in the first instance. So
let me just interrupt. Let's get the others on. So, Paul,
can you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I was interested what Niall said early on, that he got involved in politics or activism in 2020 during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved in politics and activism in 1970, so 50 years previous to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a different.
Well done.
That was a different society. It was Enoch Powell that got me involved in politics. Mm-hmm. The fight back against mass immigration and against joining the EU. They were the two big issues. Mm-hmm. Now, when I lived in Liverpool in Walton, and there was no drug culture in 1970. The only people who took drugs were hippies. You know, they were like university students. The guys liked the beer. They liked to get bashed on the ale. And that was about it. We smoked cigarettes. Now, as the 70s proceeded, society started to disintegrate. This is the problem. Drugs weren't in our society because there was a social solidarity in the working class which wouldn't allow them to come in. Fathers were heads of their family. Mm-hmm. People went to church. There were Catholic churches. The Orange Order was very strong where I lived. There were Protestant churches. There was a community, and that community policed itself. We didn't need the police to keep drugs out. Yeah. If anyone was selling heroin or started to sell drugs, they'd just get a knock on the door and they'd be kicked out. A bit like you're getting in Belfast now. They're trying to bring the immigrants to Belfast, and the loyalists are just going around and barricading the house and stopping it. There was direct social action, but there was also morality that underlay the whole of the community. As I say, these were Christian communities. and we knew the difference between right and wrong, and we believed in right and wrong. We believed in light and darkness. We believed in what was good and what was evil. When this disintegration began to unfold in the 1970s, this is because we lost the high ground. Rock and roll came in, the open society came in, the permissive society, the fruits of Harold Wilson's government, legalized abortion, legalized easy divorce, legalized homosodomy, got rid of the capital punishment. So they stopped properly punishing criminals. And we got what we call a permissive society. And this was an attack on the working class and our social solidarity, on our Christian foundations and on the family. And it was into that vacuum, into that weakness, that the drugs started to come. Drugs were part of the dissolution of society. This is a big cultural issue, a big spiritual issue. The people who want to destroy the West, the people who want to replace us in our own society with third world invaders, Pakistanis and Africans pouring into our country, they used the drug culture as a great vehicle to break our communities and to set one against another. But also they were undermining the rise of feminism, as I say, easy sex, contraception, television started to impact people in a big way in the 1970s. Drugs were part of that culture of social disintegration. And then the state, I mean, you talked about the NHS there. The NHS were facilitating the drug culture. They were promoting it. The biggest drug pushers in this society are GPs.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about illegal drugs. The real problem in this society are the legal drugs, the happy pills that the GPs are dishing out day in, day out. This is all about the spiritual destruction of our society. Now, I'm a Christian. I go to church. A heroin addict turned up at our church, and he got real faith in the Lord, and he gave up heroin. Didn't have to go on a program. Said he didn't really experience bad withdrawal. He said, but I was changed inwardly, and I thought, I don't want this stuff anymore. I don't need it. It's a source of darkness. And I know a guy in Dublin, Mike McKeever, who ran a church whose whole function was to get in heroin addicts and get them clean and get them off heroin and give them a new purpose in life. And he was amazingly successful. He was a Pentecostal, he was spiritually empowered preacher, Mike McKeever. What a guy. And he got hundreds of kids in Dublin off heroin. And you know what the authorities did? They persecuted them because it's their racket. The drug game's their racket. The NHS, it's all about money at the end of the day and power for these people. They don't care about us. We've got to stop thinking that somehow the state cares about the British people.
Yeah.
They want to replace us. They want to get rid of us. And the drugs are just another vehicle to do it, another means to destroy the indigenous population of this society, destroy our solidarity. And this is just, unless we turn it round, really, any sort of libertarian policy, any tolerance of drugs, this is short-term things. We need to go much deeper than that if we're going to survive as a society. But we've got to give ourselves a new... I think the only way you really get off drugs, because anyone can be tempted onto drugs. Before I became a Christian, I dabbled in drugs. I wasn't an addict, but I dabbled in them because it was part of the culture. But there's a temptation there. But if you got something higher, a deeper purpose in life, a deeper meaning in life. If people started to get married earlier, I mean, you've just become a father, Niall. You know what that means, don't you? That's changed your life completely, hasn't it? Yeah. You have now got a new sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in life. Because I know what the impact fatherhood had on me. It was transformational. And so you really want to create a decent community now for your children to grow up in. And you see, if you give people that sense of purpose, they will drive drugs out of their community. They'll put drugs in their place. And really, for me, that's the only solution in the long term. We have a short-term problem. We've got to deal with it. But Pat, you're more of an expert on that.
Thank you, Paul. Apologies for being late. I just literally walked in the door, working and all that, and it's difficult to get to all these live streams and that when you're working sometimes. So, yeah, this debate is quite. I feel quite passionate about this debate because, you know, I'm not proud to admit it, but I was addicted to heroin for many years. And so I do know the drug problem firsthand, and I'm completely clean now. And I don't advise anyone to take any drugs, cannabis, heroin, cocaine. I wouldn't even advise people to drink, to be honest. I don't drink. So, and that we make that clear in the policy anyway. But just to quickly reiterate, in our party, we're a young party. We started in 2022, and we had to get a load of policies on the website, you know, so we can have a political party. And, you know, if there is one of the policies people really disagree with, we said, you know, if you want to write up a counter policy, and then we bring it to the officers' meeting and we'll have a vote on it and we'll install the most popular policy. So, but as I said, you know, we started up from scratch. We're only a couple of years old. So, but yeah, going back to the debate. So when I was on heroin, you know, I'm not proud to admit it, but I enjoyed it for quite a long time until it got really bad. And that was after about 7-8 years. Now, if it was decriminalised, I would have got bored a lot quicker. I could have been maybe off it within 2 or 3 years. But I ended up struggling to get off it for like 10, 11 years. But what I'm trying to say is all the ducking and diving, all the excitement, that was a draw to it, all the crazy lifestyle, and you'd get bored so much quicker of it. That's one point I would say about it, the decriminalisation. Also, someone mentioned COVID. Now, the COVID vaccine, the root cause for that whole thing was financial greed. The big pharma were desperate to push it out to the governments. Now, the problem is with the NHS, it's supposed to be a free health service. We all know it's not free because we pay for it with our taxes. But behind the NHS, you've got the pharmaceutical companies who are private companies who are motivated by greed. And in one of our policies, we talk about that, the NHS, and we need to find some sort of system where a Christian nationalist government takes control of the pharmaceutical industry, so we don't have this financial greed problem, which is a massive problem. And so that would also counteract what Niall said about if the doctors had were giving out the prescriptions for the drugs and stuff. So the safe consumption room, I'm not sure now. Is it just the one of them in Glasgow? Is it at the moment, or is there a few scattered about?
No, so it's just the one that's on Hunter Street in Carrollton in Glasgow's East End. If you've ever been to the Barrowlands concert venue in Glasgow, really famous landmark. It's just a 3-4 minute walk for there. It is only the one pilot program, as we say, but I'm starting to hear and see the murmurs in the media saying we need to roll this out across Scotland. And I mean, just as a sort of anecdote as well, I went in there. It's not well used at all, Pat. It's not well used at all. I went in because we had done this big, huge needle cleanup. We done a nearby train station. So I took, I was like, what we're going to do with all these needles, these 30 needles? So I need to dispose of them somewhere. So I went to this safe consumption room to dispose of them there. And when I went in, there was 3 receptionists. There was 3 receptionists in a box smaller than this office right here, and they were all doing nothing. They were all doing nothing, and I think just that it takes them like weeks to respond to emails when they've got 3 receptionists on. I think it's a situation where it's just jobs for the boys. Some people have got a really cushy number in there. They're doing little to nothing. And they're happy with that. And of course, when I went in, I wanted to dispose of the needles. And I said, I've got all these needles I want to dispose in, and I've got the manager's called it. And I was speaking to the manager. I said, I've just collected these needles for the local area. And I'm having a private conversation with the manager, and the woman in the reception pipes up and says, "Oh, these needles have been there for ages." And I says, "It doesn't matter how long they've been there. I mean, they're here now. Can you dispose of them?" But it's just, it seems to be they're always on the defensive. They're on the defensive. They're on the back foot straight away because they want to keep their cushy job. They want to keep their the income coming in, and they want to keep this jobs for the boys type situation. And I can see that being rolled out right across Scotland, because we just get scammed over and over and over again up here in Scotland.
Yeah, I thought that you were saying that the reason there's so much drug use and needles in that area is because of this consumption room and it's attracting all the junkies. Is that not the case?
Well, it's certainly what it will do is attract dealers to the area. If anything, I think that the area was picked because of the prevalence of drug users in that area. That's an easy admission to make. They said they put it there because it was already the local areas just spotted with injection sites. But these injection sites, they're still being used. The addicts haven't come away from there because they didn't want to be put under the spotlight. They don't want to be viewed as some sort of guinea pig in their experiments. So I think what the real draw is the fact that there's a heroin replacement therapy program going on that I think upwards of 24 people in Scotland are on, where they're getting Class A heroin on our money, of course, given to them daily. And that's for the people waiting outside the clinic, waiting for their pals to go in and get their 15-minute slot so they can take it, and then they can sit on a couch and then they can go away. But again, what it does is, what are they doing? What they're chasing that high for the rest of the day, Pat. And it's feeding criminality. We've even got sort of local areas that have got these sort of drug programs where if you go in and you give your blood, they'll give you £20. And when I say they'll give you £20, it's a £20 note they're giving you. It's not, and a lot of these addicts aren't got bank accounts or anything like that. So what are they going to spend that £20 on, Pat? What are they going to spend it on?
Well, I don't agree with the this safe room thing, because what that tends to do is it attracts all the addicts from all parts of Scotland into that area and causes a big problem for that area. And also, drug taking on the streets can be stamped out, because in my election campaign in Covent Garden, it's probably one of the worst drug problems in the country around there. And they're openly selling drugs. One of our leafleters who came leafleting with me the other day was offered drugs on her way home by the dealers. And so my solution to that is an automatic 4-week prison sentence for anyone taking drugs on the street. Now, they can easily do that because they've done it with alcohol multiple times. They've done alcohol-free zones. There's certain areas you just don't see people drinking tins of beer anymore. And that's because they've got these alcohol-free zones. So on my leaflet, I've said, that's my idea to solve the drug problem in Covent Garden, to stop people taking it outside people's front doors. Automatic 4-week prison sentence. If you're an heroin addict, you are never going to do that again, because you will go into prison. You're going to be ill for 3 weeks, and you're going to lose your drugs, and you're not going to want that to happen again. It won't happen again. I mean, but as I say, like in the policy on a national level, I believe, and that's our policy, that decriminalisation has to be tried and see what the results are, because in Brazil, I lived in Brazil for a bit, and there's literally a civil war going on between the drug gangs and the army of Brazil. The drug gangs have got better weapons because they've got so much money, and this problem's just not going to go away. So this leads me to think that, you got the CIA, right? The drug trade is a perfect way to funnel money around the world to create uprisings in other countries and things like that. Otherwise, it's incredibly difficult. The more digital the banking system gets, that's a big element. And I don't understand why they haven't done it. And going back to the safe room, like, if only one country decriminalised drugs, they're going to get a flood of junkies from the whole world going to that country. So you've got to look at that aspect as well, because they tried it in Switzerland before. I told you in the DMs, Zurich Park, it was called, Needle Park. That was the name of it. And all the junkies from all around Europe all went there, and it just caused a massive problem. And you obviously got to avoid that. But, they tried to make alcohol illegal, and they couldn't do it. And that's how the mafia was created. So I just think from personal experience that that's and so okay. So how do you stop it? I mean,
So
one minute. So you could, the only way to stop it is like maybe stopping it is death penalty, right? And I don't think they're going to bring the death penalty into this country. And another thing, if it was a death penalty for selling drugs, think how easy it would be to set someone up to get them the death penalty, right? That's one thing. The second thing is sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. Go on, carry on now.
You know what, Pat? I just wanted to say now, can I just say this? Pat talked about the glamour of drugs and the wild lifestyle associated with it, the exciting lifestyle for kids. It's been glamorized for decades. We've got to de-glamorize drugs. This is a cultural war. But the issue of boredom is really important as well, what Pat raised. A lot of young people are bored. They think, as I said earlier, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life?
Exactly.
You know, what's giving me drive in life? I mean, the pursuit of drugs gives people some drive. Now, Mike McKeever, when he was running his church in Dublin and getting a lot of kids off heroin, he was noticing when the kids left it. I said to Mike, what happens when they leave your church? Because, he was providing accommodation for them and everything. He said, well, sadly, they go back into the world. And a lot of them, after 6 to 10 weeks, they slide back into drugs. And he said, you know what? I found out the reason why. He said, because they come back into church. And I'd asked him, I say, why did you go back into drugs after being clean for so long? And he said, we were bored. Life out there is boring. He said, when you with God, when you're in a spiritual community where you're being fed spiritually, where your soul is being fed, you feel whole. You feel contented. You feel like your life is meaningful. He said, but when you separate yourself from God, you go back into this empty world where you don't mean anything. You don't mean anything to anyone. And people know this. Kids know this. The families broke. They don't care about them. They've been cut off from the nation, cut off from their communities, and they find some meaning in the drug community and in the drug lifestyle. And that's the tragedy. So it's not just a legal issue. It's not just a criminal issue. It's an issue of the soul, really. How do we, create a society where people? Jesus said, "May you prosper as your soul prospers." You've got to want your soul to prosper. Once your soul's prospering, you're not hungry for drugs. You're not hungry for hits because you're content in yourself, and you're building community with other people, and that's your fulfillment. So I think what Pat said there is actually quite profound. But go on now, carry on.
Well, I mean, I could listen to you all night, Paul. And what you said. I mean, the fact that you've been in this almost for the 70s, 50 years. I mean, my heart broke a wee bit there when you were talking about. I mean, because the desolation of communities. It must have broken your heart over this 50-year period, and see it happen unfold. I mean, I'm new to this game compared to you, and it really is heartbreaking for having to go through all that and see it all happen firsthand over the course of 5 decades. So, like I said, I could listen to you all night, Paul. And again, you're totally right about the spiritual aspect of getting off drugs. There's only one proven method on the planet to get off drugs, and that is the 12-step recovery program. And that's the only proven method, ladies and gentlemen. And all of that, at the end of it, it's because you're seeking a higher power, whatever that power is. It's seeking that higher power that allows you to get off the drugs. But going back to what Pat was saying, it's interesting because I'm having conversations with people, and my sort of mentor in this is, a man called Colin McGowan. He does prison talks. He goes in all the prisons. He talks to addicts there. He does the school talks. He takes addicts around the schools and does talks there. And it is his life's mission to get as many people off alcohol and drugs as humanly possible. And he's one of the best person. I mean, just like if you talk about this glowing. This person in Dublin with such a reputation because he is giving back. He's helping other people. it's a similar sort of aspect with this gentleman Colin. But when I'm having conversations with him, it's like, you know, how do you get after the dealers and how do you sort of stop this drug problem? It's not a situation where, you know, you've never had somebody come into your door and asking, would you like to buy heroin or cocaine? It's always the user going else and seeking it. It's a sort of request-driven aspect to this. So I think it's always going to be in the public consciousness, this seeking of illicit substances, but it's hard to sort of put a cap on it unless it's just not available. If it's not available, I think my method would be to come down with an iron fist. It reminds me of a conversation that Trump had with Xi Jinping. And Trump says, we've got such a problem with drugs in the USA. Do you have that in China? You know, having 2 billion people. And he says, no. Why is that? It's because we give the drug dealers the death penalty.
No tolerance.
No tolerance whatsoever. They don't have a drug problem. And it's one of these things, it's so very hard line. It's you know, it's hard to see, like, where do you draw the line? It's maybe too hard line for me, the death penalty, but at the same time, it's the problem doesn't exist anymore. So it's one of these.
Let me just interrupt. I mean, one of the things, we've got a guy running in Manchester who's called Nick Buckley, and he ran for the mayor of Manchester and that. Now, his idea with drugs was to get these people just off the streets into shelter if they're homeless, knowing that a lot of them take drugs. But from that point, you can get people, counsellors, and get people to, you know, get information on these people, find out where they're living and stuff like that, and keep that up so that we can give them some kind of help. Because, you know, eventually one of them will turn around, yeah, I do need help, I'll go through the process. Then we need to spend some time doing it. But our government don't want to spend any money doing that. You know what I mean? They want to spend money on diversity and equity, DEI initiatives, rather than spending money for counsellors to go and counsel the drug users and that. Now, that was Nick's idea, and I like that. But that's why I asked you about when they go to these centres. It's just in Scotland, they just go in, they get the hit, and they go. But on Nick's way, he'd get more control, where he can get people to talk to him. He might be able to get them to see a counsellor. They come back regular to that housing place or that sleeping place. Then they can monitor them better and stuff like that. And, you know, that was his sort of like thing. But no politician will do it because they're too scared. If someone dies, it could ruin like the career. So they're not prepared to take the risk. Now, I would take the risk.
What I mean, I'd take sort of Paul's approach. I'd send a chaplain in or a sort of spiritual missionary into these facilities as well, because again, it's the only proven method to come off. And I sort of wanted to touch upon what Pat said about, you know, criminalising drug taking as well. I don't know much about the prisons in England, but it's easier to get drugs in Scottish prisons than it is outside in the public. So I don't think you're solving the problem when you're if you're trying. You know, it's not like they're going into the, you know, the cold tank. They're not going into like a rehab facility for 90 days solid, and they're not getting any drugs at all. I think the prevalence of drugs in Scottish prisons is too much that they won't be able to avoid it. And in fact, a lot of people go into a prison here in Scotland not addicted to anything, and then when they come out, they're addicted to drugs. It's one of these things. So the issue is still sort of unsolved. I think it will take a good few minds to come together and try to
Let me add a few things. Let me add a few things to the conversation. So if it was decriminalised, right, the government would have control of it, and they could make the drugs much safer. Yeah, I know tens of people who have OD'd and died from drugs. They would not have OD'd.
I agree with that 100%.
That's one thing, and so the sentences for dealing drugs in this country, if you get arrested for selling Class A's heroin or cocaine, you're selling just grams or 2 gram packets, you're going to get 3 years in prison. If you get caught selling ounces, that level, you're looking about 5, 6, and if you get caught selling kilos, you're getting like 10 years, right? No one wants to do those sentences, right? But those people are going like repeatedly going in after getting done for it already. I know this for a fact. So the demand, the money they're making is so much that these sentences are having no effect whatsoever. Now, if you go to America, there's many, probably hundreds of thousands of people in America who are doing life sentences from selling drugs, right? And it hasn't made a blind bit of difference, right? So we go back to the capital punishment solution. If you have capital punishment for selling drugs, you're making it really illegal. You're going to have to criminalize all the people taking drugs. So all those people in prison now, the prisons are flooded with them. It's like probably 75% of the people in prison are there because of drugs and they're drug addicts. So all those people are going to be like criminalized even more. And I just don't think that's the way to go. And going back to China, I don't, they might say that they've solved the problem, but I don't think they have. In Afghanistan, the Taliban are the most strict kind of government you can ever get, and they got a massive heroin problem. But then again, they do facilitate selling it to the West, growing it and selling it. But so yeah, it's I don't believe in a death penalty myself, but if people do believe in that, I can see that could be an option to deal with it. But as I say, it's be very easy to set someone up if you had that. And
can I just say on
one more thing, Paul. The most important thing what Paul brought to the conversation earlier on is the Christianity aspect.
Yes, I believe that's right.
The demand for drugs in the West is just so off the scale. Like, I mean, the money's there to be made because there's millions and millions of people in America and Europe who want to take cocaine and they want to take heroin. It's as simple as that. And it's because there's a massive void in society. Like Paul said, there's no families. I'm glad to hear you just had a child now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our society's been destroyed, and we know who's destroyed it, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Chinese approach and authority in society, because I had the pleasure of meeting a few Chinese girls and a few Chinese lads who were over here studying or visiting, and I was just struck how polite they were, how decent they were, how respectful they were. They were great ambassadors for their society. I mean, and it struck me that authority in the society has collapsed. We have a state, we have a police force, we have a military, we have a government, but nobody respects them. Nobody thinks they're sincere.
Well said.
You see, it says in the Bible, if your authority is in line with God, that authority will have force, it will have power. It's got to be moral authority. We know now that the state is immoral in this country. Yeah. It's not promoting healthy morals. No. And therefore nobody and the police. I mean, I went into a police station and complained about them flying the gay flag, and I was arrested. I was demonized. So the police promote perversion, and no one respects the police anymore. So there's a collapse of authority, and that is also the attack, the feminist attack on the male in the family. The father, who was the head of the family, John benefited from having a strong father. I did, a father was your role model. He made sure you stayed on the straight and narrow. If I'd have come into my house with heroin or cocaine, my dad would have given me a hell of a walloping. I just would not do that, even if he found out I was taking it, So I had that respect. So the people respected authority, and they have that in China. Now, ultimately, if people are doing things which are destroying lives and taking young lives, you have to have the death penalty. You have to say to them, this is wicked enough and serious enough to take your life. And that's what the Chinese do. Once you remove the death penalty, people say, well, you don't really take it that seriously. It says in the Bible, if you shed someone's blood, if you murder somebody, you will pay with your life. That is the only way to punish evil people. And I think that those people who market heroin across the borders and cocaine, they're destroying people's lives. We don't want in the society. If we want a healthy society, we have to really put these people in the place, and we can't go softly. We need a harsher approach with authority, but we also need a spiritual approach. This is the balanced approach. We want to save these kids, because we love these kids and we value these kids and we know the potential their lives have, and we don't want to see it squandered. So we've got to provide them with a good future and a good path through life. And that's the challenge. It goes beyond the law. It goes beyond justice. As I say, it's about the soul of our society. And that ultimately is what we've got to redeem. John?
Right, guys. Let me got a little video, right? Just bear with me. Don't go nowhere. You can get angry, but just don't go nowhere. But we've got a little video.
Not a single black member of the Scottish Parliament.
That's it. That's it. That's all that guy gets on our show.
That
I'm not
pestilence.
playing anymore because I would just end up ripping down my curtains and just breaking a piece of wood outside. The most disgraceful speech I've ever heard on British soil was that speech.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that Scotland's like 97% white anyway, why would there be any more black people in positions of authority? It just wouldn't be like that statistically. That guy, I'm not saying I hate him, I despise him. Thank you very much. But Niall, it's been an honour, mate, honestly.
No, it's been a pleasure myself.
Next time I go to Scotland, I'll meet you.
That's perfect. I just wanted to, just one wee final thing that I didn't touch on was what Pat was saying about the glamorization of drugs, the sort of rough and tumble, the sort of wild lifestyle. I mean, I always make a point. I don't know if you like the darts recently, but I know I got into the darts during the COVID time as well. But I went to one of these Premier League darts events at the Glasgow Hydro. And, you know, it's all these young guys. And all I'm hearing around me is, he's away sniffing, he's away doing drugs. It's so prevalent in our society now, and it's one of these things with young people. I think we need to drive the sort of coolness down. It's not cool to take cocaine. It's not cool to take these drugs. It really is sort of repulsive, and everyone can sort of see through you if you do. You know. So I think we need to be a campaign of de-glamorizing this thing. It's been glamorized in all the movies, television, and all the media for the longest amount of time. And the sort of excitement needs to be taken out of it as well. So there's a few different things, but honestly, I've had a spirited chat here tonight. I've loved listening to Paul. Great guidance. Authoritative speech, and like I said, I could listen to him all night. Such a wealth of knowledge. It's probably. But yeah, I've really enjoyed myself. And Pat, thank you ever so much for inviting me on. It's been an honour, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Niall, thank you very much, mate. Honestly, it's an honour for me. And as I said, the late Arlene, former girlfriend, she was from Glasgow. So the past few years, since 2018, I spent loads of time up there. And when I first went up in 2018, the day before I came back, it was Inverness Gay Pride Parade. And I went up filming it. So I went up talking to the Christians, and then there was a vicar leading the parade. And then after the parade had got to its place, I went headed over towards him. So all the councillors, all the important people were there. And I went like that. Hang on a minute. Them other Christians said that you like not being like very Christian. And he tried to say something. And then I said, well, my name's John Lawrence, a right-wing activist up for the weekend in Scotland. See you later, mate. And walked off. And every one of the faces just dropped at the floor. You know, I well took the piss out of them. But that was my first time in Scotland, my first month. And that's what I got put up with. And
Are you from Glasgow, Niall?
I'm a Fifer originally, the Kingdom of Fife. I lived in Glasgow for quite a lengthy time, or the outskirts of Glasgow and Hamilton and the surrounding areas, and that. I've lived basically in every city in Scotland at this point.
Are you from Kirkcaldy originally?
Kirkcaldy, no, but that's where my brother stays now. In Kirkcaldy, that's a great wee place. I mean, that's got the same wee drug problems there. It's quite run down.
Adam Smith, the great philosopher, came from Kirkcaldy.
Yep.
I just want to say, Niall, I think you've got incredible potential as an activist, a politician. Stay on the straight and narrow. Stay level-headed. I think you can go a long way in politics, Niall. I think you've got a lot
Thanks
of
very much,
Bill.
Paul. Appreciate it.
Right, thank you everyone. Don't forget like and subscribe. This is Party Talk and HP UK TV. We're live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. every Friday, 9 p.m. We have a Bible class weekly on a Wednesday, 8 p.m. If you want to get involved, here is our email. One sec, guys, one sec.
And how can people find you, Niall, on social media?
I mean, just even if you just Google my name, it comes up with a big thing about me now. Honestly, it's they've done a number on me. So yeah, it's actually shocking what they've done to me. Really, you know, neo-Nazi Niall attends Reform Conference and all this stuff. Just Google me. But the best thing you can get me on is just I'm most active on X. I've been neglecting it the last few weeks because I've been working quite a lot. But yep, just at Niall Fraser 8, like you flashed up on the screen. That's the quickest way to get me. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul, Pat, and thank you, Niall. Honestly, it's been an honour. I've been waiting for this for ages. When Pat said, I would like, okay, well excited. And, but I love the stuff you do, Niall. I really do. And keep it up. And keep going in politics. You know, eventually you'll get your chance. You know what I mean? I'll have my chance soon, and you know, I know I will. Pat'll have his chance, and we're breaking strides. We're absolutely working outside the box. We're being noticed all the time. One of my things is going to like public meetings. So I've been in front of chief constables of police, mayors, and I've called them crooks and sex offenders. That's the first time I went to a public meeting. I turned round, said a few things about the police. Now they're a national disgrace, 2020. And then I called them all. I said, you might as well all be crooks and sex offenders. And, you know, I couldn't have got away with that, saying that sort of like in public, only in that kind of meeting. But, you know, and I bring up the tough questions and they don't like it. But I'm there and I'm making a stamp, and you're certainly making a stamp as well. But thank you very much again, Niall.
Appreciate it. Right, that's me away. Thank you very much.
Speak to you